The story that's about to be told is documented in Jacob's archived live streams. Well, was documented. He has since deleted most of them by now. But there are clips out there if you know where to look. Just don't look too hard. The deeper you dig, the more likely you are to find something. Watching back. It all started 3 months ago. During Jacob's regular evening gaming streams, Jacob was not a huge creator. Around 50,000 followers, enough to make a decent living, but still far from being a household name. His content was simple. He played horror games 4 nights a week, face cam in the corner, usual reaction stuff. The content was nothing groundbreaking, but his viewers seemed to enjoy his genuine terror at jump scares. It turns out he didn't know what real terror was until all this started. The first comment appeared on a VOD of his Resident Evil playthrough. "Who's that standing in your doorway at 1:03:03? At first, Jacob ignored it. It was normal to get these prank comments from fans when you stream horror games. But later that night, Lynn, Jacob's head mod, messaged him on Discord. "Hey Jacob, have you seen the comments from last night's VOD? Might want to check that timestamp." Lynn had been with Jacob since he had 10 viewers. She wasn't the type to buy into conspiracy theories. If something caught her attention, it was worth investigating. Jacob pulled up the archive. Nothing unusual had happened during that stream, just him screaming at brutes like an idiot for 3 hours. But when he checked that timestamp, his heart dropped to his feet. There was definitely something there. A dark shadow barely visible in the dark hallway behind him. He couldn't make out any features, but the shadow was certainly human-shaped, and it seemed to be watching. The weird thing was, he had had his LED strips on that night. He always did. That part of the hallway should have been bathed in purple light. Jacob immediately called Lynn and his other mod, Marcus. "Tell me you guys see it too," he said, sharing his screen. "Yes," Marcus replied after a long pause. Crystal clear. "But I don't understand. I was watching the entire live last night. There was definitely nothing in the hallway. Otherwise, I would have seen it." Lynn was already going through the live chat logs. "Nothing here either. Not a single person mentioned seeing anything during the broadcast. It's only in the replay." "Could it be a compression artifact?" Marcus suggested. "Or maybe someone hacked the upload." Jacob checked the original recording on his local drive. The shadow was there too. Same timestamp, same position, same human-like form. "Run it through DaVinci," Lynn suggested, calm and methodical. "Let's enhance the brightness, see what we're dealing with." Jacob did, and wished he hadn't. With the brightness and contrast adjusted, the figure became more distinct. Not clearer exactly, but more wrong. Like looking at a human shape that had been slightly distorted, stretched in ways that shouldn't be possible. For the next week, Jacob obsessively reviewed his old streams. The more he looked, the more he found. And to his horror, the figure had been appearing for weeks before anyone had started to notice. It was always behind him, always getting closer, always just slightly more visible in each stream. And always only in the replays. It's following a pattern, Lynn pointed out during one of their late-night Discord calls. She'd compiled a spreadsheet of appearances, timestamps, positions, stream titles. Look at the timestamps, 1:13:13, 1:23:23, 1:33:33. Out of all of them, she seemed to be the only one still able to maintain that same practical, unaffected demeanor. "Could be a bug in the streaming software," Marcus said, but he didn't sound convinced. "What if we—" He cut off suddenly. "What?" Jacob asked, nerves starting to fray. "We'll have to check the next logical timestamp in that sequence. 1:43:43. Jacob's blood ran cold. The next stream was scheduled for the day after tomorrow. He almost canceled it completely. Even silently planned he won't play until they reached 1:43:43. But by then, clips from the previous streams were starting to circulate. People thought it was an elaborate marketing campaign. His viewer count rocketed. Sponsors were reaching out. And part of him hoped, that Marcus was right about it being a software glitch. Maybe they won't find anything after all, and this would help to prove their timestamp theory wrong. He tried not to consider the alternative. To prepare, he changed his setup. Bought more lights, rearranged his room so there was nowhere to hide, installed a second camera facing behind him. When he posted an update for the scheduled live stream, the comments were flooded with people excitedly waiting to spot the figure. But during live broadcasts, there was never anything to see. That day, the stream started like any other. He was playing an indie horror game, trying to act normal while obsessively checking his live feed. His hands were shaking so badly that he kept missing simple turns in the game. The chat noticed, of course, but they thought he was just immersed in the game's atmosphere. If only they knew. When the timestamp approached, the temperature in Jacob's room dropped suddenly. Impossible for a room with central heating in summer. The stream stuttered for a fraction of a second. Just a tiny hiccup. But in that moment, every hair on his body stood on end. Something felt wrong on a primal level, like a mouse sensing a snake's presence. But none of this had appeared on the live monitor. Even Jacob could see nothing reflected in the camera facing behind him. He played the game on autopilot, no longer able to concentrate, and the chat, who knew nothing about the timestamp, teased him for being scared of such a normal scene in the game. And then, as abruptly as it had started, the cold dissipated as if nothing had ever happened. But something definitely did, and the VOD replay revealed exactly what. The figure was there, standing directly behind Jacob's chair, and this time, he could make out details he wished he'd never seen. Its proportions were wrong, arms too long, neck bent at an impossible angle. But it was the suggestion of its face that horrified him. It was as if someone had taken human features and rearranged them by throwing dice. Eyes where they shouldn't be, a mouth that wrapped too far around what might have been a head, and all of it seemed to be looking directly at the camera, directly at anyone watching the playback. Jacob couldn't sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that almost face. Lynn and Marcus stayed on Discord with him until dawn, analyzing the footage frame by frame. That's when they noticed something worse. In each frame, the figure's position changed slightly, not like normal movement, more like stop-motion animation, jerky and unnatural. In one frame, its hand reached toward his head. In the next, it withdrew, reaching, withdrawing, like it was practicing. Clips from the replay went viral, of course. Jacob's DMs exploded with questions about how he'd done it, what software he'd used, whether it was all planned. All the big streamers were breaking down the footage, trying to spot the edits. That brought it even more viewers. Sponsors were throwing money at him for what they thought was marketing genius. But then the messages started getting darker. People reported seeing movement in their own recordings after watching Jacob's clip. Small things at first, shadows where there shouldn't be shadows, slight distortions in their face cam backgrounds. One viewer sent him a clip of their own stream, and he made the mistake of watching it at 2 a.m. There, in their bedroom window, was something with too many eyes and that same wrong smile. He tried to warn people, but that only made his channel grow faster. Hundreds of thousands of viewers now, all waiting for the next appearance, all sharing clips, all spreading whatever this thing was. All this fame, it was everything he had ever dreamt of, but he felt none of the excitement, only fear. The final stream wasn't planned. Jacob had actually decided to quit, had a whole announcement ready. But when he woke up that morning, his streaming software was already running. His monitors were on, displaying his empty chair. He should have just pulled the plugs, should have smashed the computers, should have burned the whole setup right then and there. Instead, like an idiot in a horror movie, he sat down to investigate. The viewer count was climbing even though he hadn't announced a stream. The chat was moving too fast to read, but one word kept repeating, "behind." The stream feed froze for exactly 3 seconds. Jacob remembered checking the timer. 3 seconds where his heart nearly burst from his chest. 3 seconds of complete silence. Not even the hum of his PC fans. The Discord call erupted. "End the stream." "Jacob, get out of there! Don't look at the monitors!" He tried to end the stream immediately, but his PC wouldn't respond. The mouse moved on its own, opening video files he'd never seen before. Each one showed the figure, standing in the backgrounds of his life, at the grocery store, in his car's rearview mirror, beside his bed while he slept. All captured by cameras he didn't have, at timestamps that matched the pattern. When he finally managed to turn everything off, having to go so far as to pull the circuit breaker, his phone lit up with voice messages from Lynn and Marcus. their own cameras had activated during his stream. Their own recordings showed shadows learning to move. When he checked the VOD later, for God knows why, those 3 seconds showed something that still made him wake up screaming. Every monitor in his setup displayed the same image. The figure, no longer content to stay in the background. It was pressed right up against his chair, its 2 long arms wrapped around the backrest. The face, that face with its distorted features, was inches from his neck. Smiling, always smiling, but not the way a human smiles. Like something that learned about smiles from studying videos in reverse. The worst part? In the VOD, you could see his reflection in the main monitor. He was just sitting there staring ahead, completely unaware of what was behind him, completely unaware of how close those hands were, completely unaware that in the final frame, one of those hands was touching his shoulder. After that, he didn't just delete his channel, he destroyed everything, smashed every screen in his apartment, but it wasn't enough. The next day, his kitchen microwave's digital display showed a playback countdown. His car's backup camera caught something smiling from the back seat. Even his damn smart doorbell kept capturing 3-second videos of his empty hallway. Except they weren't empty in playback. Wherever he went, where there were screens, the screen would flicker. And in those flickers, he swore he could see a reflection that wasn't his. Something with too many angles. Something getting closer. Lynn and Marcus hadn't streamed since either. Lynn said she once caught something moving in her webcam's preview window. Marcus didn't come online at all the days after that incident. Some people claimed they could see the figure reaching for Jacob in that last frame. Others swore they'd spotted it in their own streams now. A few said they'd found it in their personal videos, home security footage. Always in the playback, never in real time. Jacob didn't stream anymore. He didn't play games, not even normal games. He'd covered or gotten rid of every screen in his apartment. But sometimes, just as he was falling asleep, he swore he could feel something standing behind him, watching. And every morning, his phone's gallery would have new videos he didn't remember recording. He never played them. He didn't think he will. But sometimes, late at night, he did wonder. If he did play those videos, would he see it? Would it still be smiling? And most importantly, would it still be moving closer? One night, he got one final message from Marcus. Whatever you do, don't check timestamps 3:33:33. Don't let anyone else check either. I found something in the code. It's not just watching anymore. It's learned. His Discord account was deleted immediately after. If you're a streamer, do yourself a favor. Don't look too closely at your archive footage. Some things are only meant to be seen in playback, and once you notice them, they notice you too. And if you think you see something strange in your VODs, for God's sake, don't check the timestamps. Some numbers have a way of repeating. Some patterns want to be found. Trust me on this one. Just keep streaming. Keep your eyes forward. And whatever you do, don't look behind you when you're watching your replays, because it isn't there. Not in real time anyway. A note was found on Marcus's desk after his disappearance, written in shaky handwriting. It's not a glitch. It's not a hack. It's using our streams to watch us, to learn from us, to spread. Every playback makes it stronger. Every viewer gives it another window. If you're reading this, remember, don't watch your replays. Don't ever watch them. It's already too late.